Welcome, everybody. I have with me a guest who I've never met in person, and I'm going to really, really soon. He's a trombonist, he's a music activist, he's an educator. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Phil Arnold. Phil, thank you for joining me on the program today. Now, you're from New Mexico, right? Were you born and raised here?
I was born in Washington, D.C., and then my dad worked with Sandia Laboratories, and it came out here in the 1960s, early 1960s. Yeah, basically, but I grew up in New Mexico.
Okay. Now, you graduated from what I read in your bio. You graduated from Manzano High School, right?
That's correct.
So when was that, and who was your band director back then?
When I came into Manzano, the legendary Fenton Katz was the band director.
Oh,
Oh yeah, he was. We had such a great big band. He was the youth symphony or junior youth symphony director too. When I got into the youth symphony program, yeah, we learned how to play with passion and just exactness, and he really demanded that of excellence from everybody. So
oh yeah,
what a pleasure.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
Fenton didn't mess around. I remember Fenton Cats, and I do remember his playing, and I remember all of I mean, he really asked a lot out of his students, and he got what he asked out of his students. He really did. He really pushed them.
well, he didn't ask; he demanded.
Yeah. Well, okay. Some band instructors are very demanding. Obviously, being that you were a student of Fenton's, he demanded it of you, and I'm sure he got it out of you guys.
Yeah, I mean, in a nice way.
Yeah. So tell me how you got started playing the trombone, and how old were you when you started playing trombone?
That's a kind of an interesting story. My parents didn't let me join bands in fourth grade when I wanted to. K.L. Higgins was teaching at the school out in the mountains I attended. Um, uh, so, so, but there was a trombone in the closet. So whenever nobody was around, I would go into my parents' closet, pull out the trombone, and go. It was so much fun. I just loved it. I was drawn to it. And then finally, in the sixth grade, I joined the band, uh, and by the seventh grade, my middle school band director was Ray Bell. Do you remember Ray Bell?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, yeah. So I had my first jazz band experience.
So you said there was a trombone in the closet. So did your dad or your mom play trombone?
I had an older brother who played trombone.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. So you've always played trombone, but you also play harmonica, right?
right.
So how did
Uh-huh.
that come about? Because that's quite the difference in the instruments, and I'm sure there's a time gap here, but I'm curious how you got started playing harmonica.
That's a that's a great question. I think even before I started playing trombone, there was, there's like a harmonica laying around in a drawer or something, and uh, Honer Corporation, they would put like a little tiny booklet inside. They'd fold it up, and they'd have a few songs and show you how to play the songs. So I learned how to play those few songs and loved it. And then I had songbooks. I also taught myself how to play piano. So I had like this little tiny Magnus chord organ, it's called. Taught myself out of one of those John Thompson books, and um, uh, then I wanted to be able to play those songs on harmonica. Got frustrated because on a diatonic harmonica, all the chromatic notes are missing. So that's when I kind of early on I got into uh, chromatic harmonica just so I could play songs and have all the notes there without having to
Okay.
go.
So were
Yeah.
you a kid when you were learned how to play harmonica, or is this more like when you were an
Yeah,
adult?
yeah. It's I played it all my life. I can't
Okay.
really remember a time I didn't I didn't play it.
So you mostly play a chromatic harmonica, right?
I do. If the depending on the musical situation, if it's like a real bluesy rock and roll kind of thing, the diatonic or country western, country rock, whatever, then the diatonic is really the way to go. So I play both depending on the situation.
Okay.
With the jazz groups, I mean it's
Oh, it's
chromatic.
got to be chromatic. Yeah. So do you show up with a big, briefcase full of harmonicas, or do you just carry a couple when you go to gigs?
If I know that I'm only going to play a couple keys, I'll just bring those two harps. Otherwise, I have all 12, and I lay them out flats going this way in increasing order, sharps going this way in increasing order, and then so you can grab them. Sometimes you have to change in the middle of the song. So I mean, you can use more than one
Okay.
harmonica on a song, depending on the sound you want to get.
Okay. And you mentioned it a few minutes ago. You also play piano, right?
I do. Mostly, I call it arranger's piano. I'm a walking encyclopedia of chords. I know every single chord there is, and the jazz chords. So I accompany my students if there's not a piano player around, and I'll go over and play piano like with the group. But mostly, I mean, in New York, all of my piano playing was solo piano, like cocktail piano. Um,
Okay.
in general. So, and that way you can kind of take your time and sort of embellish and elaborate on the chords. And
Okay. So you've got three instruments that you play, which is trombone, piano, and harp. So that's cool. Now you attended like most of us, and we're going back a while because we all have to go back. We all remember this. You attended Hummingbird Music Camp in Hamus. And do you have good memories of Hummingbird?
such good memories. I mean, that was really where I found my musical inspiration. I went up there. I went up there a little bit as a kid, one summer I came home and my parents couldn't believe I was a different musician. I mean, suddenly I played with passion, with energy and a soloistic quality I'd never possessed before. I didn't have any private lessons when I was a kid. I was sort of like a lot of us. I was just on my own, trying to figure it out as you go, playing in the band class. And um, at Hummingbird, you get a private lesson every single day, and you're required to learn. You're called upon to learn, challenging music, and you put on a concert at the end of the week, plus a solo performance, a solo recital performance. Like wow, in 1 week, and the miracle happens. And so I credit Hummingbird for a lot of my early inspiration as a kid. I'm very honored to be a teacher now. Every year, every summer, I go up there and
Oh, you
teach.
go up there, you teach up there. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So you're
Yep.
paying back your dues because yeah, I remember Hummingbird as a kid and I had so much fun there because when I was up there, Bobby Shue was teaching up there and I got
Uh-huh.
to work with that's the first time I got to meet Bob. But oh man, that that
Were
place
you at the jazz camp that Bobby taught? I was there too. You and I met and didn't even know it. I think probably at that
probably
time.
we were I would say
Yeah,
I was just a kid. I would think I was like, well, let's see. I think the last time I was there, I was probably 16 years old. So,
that's right. You were the tag along little brother. I played with your older brother
right.
Rick.
You played with Rick.
Yeah,
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 I
we
was
had.
I was Rick. Rick was the saxophonist. I was the trumpet player, and I was the little kid
Uh-huh.
that kind of hid behind him and kind of smiled and said, "Okay." So anyway, yeah, I had really good times up there, and I kind of like I said, I kind of stepped on my brother's shirt tails, but I had a lot of good fun up there. So now we both remember the educational programs that the New Mexico Jazz Workshop used to put on, right? And they used to
Yes.
host these things up at Madrid and they were I mean I learned a lot by getting up there and they don't do that anymore. It was that little teeny baseball field. They would host concerts up there they used to let us kids get up on stage and play. And we sounded horrible, but they used to let us get up and play. And then they'd bring up the real musicians and they'd bring up all those guys that would play, but they'd always give us that opportunity in the early afternoon for that first hour. Come and play, bring your horns, stand on stage, get used to that. Do you remember all of that, don't you?
Oh, yeah, vividly. That was my early training. Like for you and a lot of us. I learned my first jazz standards standing up there, and I learned how to play right notes by playing wrong notes first. A lot of them, and they would tolerate it and let you come back week after
Yeah,
week, and hopefully you get a little better every time.
right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If it wasn't for that experience, playing for the workshop every Sunday afternoon up in
Mhm.
Madrid. Before that, is at Foreign Legion Post 13. Do you remember that?
No, no, that was before. That was probably before
Or
me. That
American
was
Legion? I
probably
mean,
American Legion. Yeah, I
yeah.
don't remember that. I just remember all the stuff up at Madrid. And I remember all the concerts up there. And I remember being up to, literally just getting up on stage and standing there and going, okay, then what am I supposed to do now? Just play the head. Okay, I can do that. Take a
Uh-huh.
solo. I don't remember this. Wait, okay, now I remember. So yeah, that was always such a good educational experience. I wish
Well,
they
yeah,
would bring that
well,
back.
yeah, especially yeah, because they also had the top local musicians playing. So after you go up and you have the experience of learning these songs, week after week, then you would hear people who had really kind of mastered those instruments, and what an inspiration that was.
Right.
Harry Hamilton, the vibraphone.
Hmm.
Chuck Coulter was always there playing his
Yep.
trumpet. You
Yep.
know, uh,
Yeah, I do remember that. I do remember that vividly, and it was always so much fun. And I'm glad that we got to experience it, and I hope that one day they'll bring it back. So let's talk about, as you came out of high school, you went to Arizona State University, right, in Tempe, and you studied jazz performance.
I actually spent a couple of years at University of New Mexico before I got the scholarship to Arizona. I got a full scholarship to Arizona State University. Uh,
Nice.
that's also when Carl Hennebickler, the trombone professor at UNM, convinced me to start playing bass trombone. He found my first bass trombone for me, and it was kind of a fortunate coincidence. I had a really nice. I worked 2 summers at Farmers Market to buy like an $800 Bach trombone, like a tenor
Okay.
trombone with the F attachment, and it got stolen. uh,
Oh,
so here's a bass trombone. Play this, and I did. And he set me up with Larry Benz from the Metropolitan Opera in New York, who came out here every summer to play with the Santa Fe Opera. So I got a good idea of how to during that first maybe it's just a year, but that first year at UNM when I was playing that bass trombone, I got into the George Roberts, the great bass trombonist George Roberts, also came out and did a clinic right about that same time. So I became totally inspired, just totally in love with the sound of those low notes.
okay.
If you can imagine, so yeah, I went up to George Roberts and I said, he's doing all this recording and playing with everybody, and played so wonderfully. And I was like, how did you get that sound? How do you do it? How can I do that? And he's like, long tones and lip slurs. Uh, about about 10 hours a day, his eyes were kind of like twinkling behind his glasses.
Well, it's okay. So let's talk about this real quick because most people don't real well, I can't say most, a lot of people don't realize there's a big difference in the trombones, because you have a tenor trombone, which is what everybody in middle school and high school will play, and then you get one with an F attachment, which is a little thumb trigger, and that thumb trigger will add more tubing, and then you get what you have right there, which is the bass trombone, and that has a double trigger, which
Yes,
adds double the amount of sliding and adds so much to the low register. And you can go down almost a whole octave and a half past what a regular trombone can do. And even lower sometimes. I mean, I've heard bass trombonists that sound like tubas.
oh yeah, it goes down easily into tuba range. Sure, yeah. If it's just a 3 valve tuba, you can actually go a little bit lower, which is always fun. Uh,
Outplay the tubas. Very nice. So yeah, most people don't realize that. And so bass trombone, it seems like bass trombone is what you have specialized in, right?
Yeah, and especially for like show playing. I was in Vegas for a minute, well, a couple of years. I played all the big showrooms with the relief bands, on the night off. So
Mm-hmm.
it's constantly changing. I was house bass trombonist at the Flamingo Hilton for about 15 months, until I went crazy. And you can only I don't have the kind of personality that can really put up with doing the same show night after night, 6 nights a week, 2 matinees on Monday. It
Oh,
becomes
that's
such
a
a
lot of work.
yeah, exactly the same music over and over and over again. It takes a whole different kind of mindset, than
Okay,
playing.
so now to play bass trombone, because most people don't realize how hard it is. I mean, you have to control the air, you have to control how it's going through the horn, you have to be able to, okay, playing high, like Maynard Ferguson in my genre, for trumpet, playing high is tough, but playing low is just as hard. I mean, really, it is, and you have to be able to control here, you have to be able to control here, and you have to control your ears because you get down on that low register and it can
Mhm.
almost sound blatty. And
Uh-huh.
there's an art to being a bass trombonist.
Very much so, yeah. And like in a big band setting, when I was in New York, I got to play with I sight read Frank Sinatra Jr.'s book. They called me to go down to Atlantic City and play with him. So I'd never seen the book, and he came up to me after the show and he goes, "Wow, there's only a couple people that play that book. My family appreciates bass trombone very much." He tells me, because Nancy Sinatra and
Hmm.
always like with George Roberts or Paul Felice playing bass trombone, and uh, so there's kind of an interpretation you do. I mean, a big band, yeah, lead trumpet takes certain liberties. Bass trombone, on the opposite end of things, also takes certain liberties. You play what's on the page, but in just those certain places, maybe you jump down or add something to kind of kick the band a little bit, and that's a whole art in itself. And
Oh,
and that's
absolutely.
yeah, and that's what Frank Jr. said. Just those places to dip down and all those little things, those kind of personality things to play. And he compared me to my idols as bass trombone wise, George Roberts and Paul Felice, and it was
Oh,
I can't.
that's nice. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a nice compliment. So now let's talk a little bit about how you got a position, because you were attending ASU when the Glenn Miller band came to town, and when the band left, you were in the band. So tell me how that happened. How did you get that gig?
Just a weird series of coincidences, like anything in life, right? But I had somebody at school at Arizona State, somebody in the jazz band is like, hey, Glenn Miller band's in town, and I think the piano player or somebody like knew somebody on the band, so I'm gonna go over and hang out. You want to go hang out? And it's like, sure, Uh, and I brought my horn with me. Actually, I was feeling kind of lazy that morning and almost didn't go. It's funny how life, uh, uh, just a split second with how life can change so suddenly. If I decided not to go and just stay home and watch reruns of The Outer Limits, which is always nice to do on Saturday morning, life would have been much different. I wouldn't have traveled around the world and had the experiences I did. But yeah, so I went over, and Larry O'Brien was trombonist, was a leader of the band at that time, and I've got sort of this. Thing where I want people to hear me, I want to play, and I want to audition for whatever. So I said, "Hey, I want to audition for your band." He's like, "Okay, sure, play me a 2 octave F major scale." And it's, so I did, bum 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 bum, kind of classical style. And then he goes, "Okay, perfect, you're in the band."
That was
Just,
it.
I didn't even realize. Their bass trombone player had just given notice like the week before. Here they're in Arizona. They're in the middle of it's a New York band. So how are they going to find a new bass trombone player? And man, I showed up and just talk about right place at the right time.
Oh
Uh,
God, yes. So you took off with the band.
Two
So
days later,
how
after that, I was in Oakland, California, a sight reading their or San Diego, I think, a sight reading their book in front of like thousands of people on stage, and it's like, wow, this is cool.
so how long were you in that band? How long did you tour with them?
I lasted for about a year. You're doing a bus and truck. I mean, you're on the bus mostly, doing one nighters, town after town after town. It kind of wears you down. I mean, you're just going and going and going and going. But I stayed on long enough to do like the Japan tour. Got to get out the country. I got to visit almost every state in the United States for the first time. A kid from New Mexico that
Boy, talk
barely.
about an opportunity that doesn't come your way. See, being as just as you said, being in the right place at the right time with the right people, the right situation, it just serendipity, I guess. It just kind of came your way.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, when you seek opportunity, you put your irons in a lot of fires, and you try a lot of things, and there's a lot of rejection also along the way. But if you're just consistently looking for those opportunities, just going for it,
Okay.
um,
So
guns
now,
blazing. Yeah.
how did you ever go back and finish your degree at Arizona State?
I did after I finished the tour. Um, I went back to Arizona State and did summer school and just boom, 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 finished the last part of it was like a sabbatical, and everyone at school was fine with it. I mean, that's kind of a good part of your education, especially for a jazz musician
Yeah.
and a jazz major. So I learned so much. Uh, Playing with the band was great, but what I especially learned was every town we pulled into, a few of us, just a handful of us, would find the local jazz club, and we would go and play standards, play bebop with whoever the local musicians were. Glenn Miller, and they would say, "Oh, come on up," and
Hmm.
so I learned a great deal. Just by night after night after night, those late night jam sessions, and learned more songs and met some amazing musicians along the way. I played at Sam Noto's club. Sam Noto from the Basie band, right? He
Right.
started, yeah, he started a jazz club up in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we were up there, and it's like, wow. I wonder if Sam's here. We didn't see Sam. We're up on stage, sitting with the group, and it's like, I wonder if Sam's here. And we were all trying to play extra fast and extra,
Yeah.
show off our talents. And somebody called up polka dots and moonbeams, and none of us really knew it. It has a crazy bridge, and
Hmm.
but if you got a good enough ear, you can kind of feel your way through it. So we were all kind of doing that, kind of showing off still kind of showing off and playing like what we thought were cool little jazz licks. And suddenly, there's Sam on stage with his trumpet, and he came up and played the most beautiful, perfect solo for polka dots and moonbeams that you've ever heard in your life. I mean, it was just a pure melody, pure beauty, pure simplicity.
Right.
And every single one of us, like kids, that thought we were such cool, hot jazz players, we got thoroughly schooled,
You got schooled, didn't you? Yeah, you got schooled. That was the
Yeah.
word that was coming to my head is you got schooled.
Oh yeah, big time by Sam Noto.
That's good.
Yeah, years later when they started Facebook, I found him. He became a Facebook friend. I shared that anecdote with him, and he liked he liked hearing about that.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So now in 1985, you moved to New York City, right? And that was
Uh,
when things really started to get interesting for you. I mean, you played with a lot of famous players. You mentioned earlier that you got to play with a lot of different bands. So tell me about your experience in New York City.
oh gosh, it was 20 years of the best 20 years of my life. I had uh, so many experiences, and it just piled up, two or three in a day, rehearsals and. With this band or that band, sometimes a recording session in the middle of things, gigs at nights. Uh, um, I started playing when I first got to New York. I started playing with street bands on the street.
Oh,
Yeah, I played with three different bands, three or four different bands. One was with Zane Massey, Dave Douglas, the trumpet player. Who's
oh,
like,
I know Dave Douglas. Yeah, I know that name.
yeah, yeah. So we did jazz, kind of taking it out and taking it somewhere else. Vince Herring was on that band too.
Vincent Herring, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So so there was some. Yeah, those are the days of great street bands in New York City. I'll
So
tell you.
now, so in case somebody doesn't know, define a street band. I know what it means. I've seen them, but so define what you mean by a street band. Literally just sitting on the corner and playing, huh?
Yeah, it's different than in New Orleans where you'd be marching around. We did you would do some of that too, marching for various the Halloween parade
Hmm.
in Greenwich Village is an example where you're marching and stuff. Or but yeah, basically you set up on the corner, or you set up in Times Square, or you set up in Grand Central Station. They had. They would license the musicians, so you'd have a license and be able to play, put up a banner. The city sponsored it, Um, um,
Play
um,
for tips, right?
yeah, you play for tips, and
Okay.
and you make more just in a few hours on the street than you would sitting all day in a cubicle answering the phone in an office.
Yeah. Oh
so
no, I
so it was
understand that.
yeah.
So now you were there,
Uh-huh.
you said you were there for 20 years, right? You were there for 20 years and you
Yes.
were basically a freelance musician that whole time, or did you kind of transition to teaching also?
I was a freelance musician the entire time.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
That was my main focus, and I wound up. It takes a long time to break into Broadway, those kind of clicks, but towards the end, I did become a Broadway player. I did play on Broadway. It took a while to be accepted, but obviously, if the guys from Nelson Riddle Orchestra are calling me to go play with Frank Jr., then I was doing pretty well. I was on top of my game, and I did a lot of jazz kind of things. Got to hang out with people like Freddie Hubbard. Got to play with Dizzy Gillespie. Got to, I mean, just a who's who of all your
Wow.
favorite stars. They're back to back, and go down to the village on Monday nights, and it's like, well, which famous jazz player that I've
Yeah, who's
featured
coming in
all my
tonight?
life? Yeah, and you take your pick. And
Okay.
always with my horn in case somebody it's like, is there a bass trombone player in the house? And and I'd be right there, just in case. And that enabled me to play with the Gil Evans Orchestra at Sweet Basil's. That enabled me to play with the Charles Mingus Orchestra at the Red Derby or wherever it was.
Well, wait, let's talk about that. You got to play, you played with the Mingus Big Band on Monday nights?
The Mingus Dynasty, yeah, I did a couple times.
Okay.
Sue Mingus was running things, and she singled me out after I played and goes, "Wow, you did a great job. I'm gonna have to call you to come back." And I gave her my card, and and then I there's so many stories like this, but I gave her my card, and then I wait like a week or two, no call. I think like a month went by. I'm waiting for Sue Mingus to call me to come play with the band. The call never came, so finally I go back down there, and I say, "Hey Sue, it's me. You know, I got my horn," and she goes, "Who are you?"
Follow up. There's a lesson for you. Always follow up.
Yeah.
Don't assume that they're going to call you. Always follow up. So
I
what was,
know, I know.
and what was the other band that you said you played with?
Oh, the Gil Evans
Oh,
Orchestra.
you played with Gil Evans Orchestra. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah. But what a pleasure, what a privilege, to be able to do that. That was like all the guys from the Blues Brothers band, Tom Malone on trombone, Lou Marini on sax. He would hire David Sanborn to come in and play saxophone just because he loved the sound so much. It's all
Yeah.
about sound, you know.
Wow. So you got to play with, oh
Yeah,
my goodness, you really did get to play with some famous players. Now,
uh, yeah.
so tell me, because you have an interesting story, how you got into teaching. Because I know you transitioned to teaching in New York, but tell me how that came about, because this is one of those weird instances where you were at the right place at the right time, maybe?
More or less. I mean, there was a music teacher shortage in the 1990s in New York, right? So if they found you, if you had a music degree, I mean, they would basically like kidnap you off the street and like throw you into a classroom. It's kind of like that. But the weird coincidence, I also became a Yamaha artist. I was working on a record that got a lot of attention and stuff. So they gave me a Yamaha horn and says, "Okay, you're officially a
Yeah,
Yamaha
Yamaha
artist, right?"
artist. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, yeah. So Yamaha was putting me on TV to do like a national TV news shows to kind of help sell their products
Hmm.
basically. But they called me to do teacher training for District 16 in Brooklyn, New York, for teachers using a new educational piano system, a classroom keyboard system, all hooked up to a computer. MIE, Music and Education. So, in the process, in order for the public schools to pay me for doing the clinic, I had to I had to be fingerprinted and get a file number with the Board of Education.
I remember that. That hasn't changed, by the way.
So once they had that information and knew how to find me, I mean, immediately they called me and said, "We need you to teach a class at Martin Luther King Junior High School in Manhattan, right behind Juilliard." And uh, at the time, 30,000 a year plus on top of whatever else I was making playing music sounded pretty good. So and I had kids. And suddenly we needed to have insurance and had a lot more
Right.
expenses. So it just seemed logical to do the Mr. Holland's Opus kind of move and get in there and start teaching. Yeah, with uh, it was a special kind of degree program where if you didn't actually take education classes, which apart from learning jazz pedagogy, I really didn't, study um, all the pedagogy that you would normally have as a band director. It's kind of a
Hmm.
learn while you earn kind of situation. So they gave you extra classes that you would take to get the 36 hours of master's credits towards in education. I mean, there's no education like uh,
Yeah. Talk
having to
about
get
throwing it in the fire and see if you burn.
absolutely. So you got to teach all these kids how to play these instruments, and there's a band room full of instruments, and there's all the books. So take home a saxophone one week, take home a flute one week, take home a clarinet, take home a bassoon, and figure out how to play. At least get through the book one, so you can show them
Right.
how to do it, show the kids how to do it. So I guess you might say a rude awakening. I thought I'd be kind of chill, like the cool teacher, and kids would instantly like me. And
It doesn't always, yeah, it's not always a movie. It's a tough thing to teach. I have all the respect for some of these teachers that I've interviewed and I have talked with. They hold a special place in my heart because teaching is tough. And especially being a music teacher, it is a tough thing. So my
well,
kudos to you for taking that on and being able to do that because yeah, and we'll talk about how that's transitioned in your life here in just a few minutes. So now in 2004, you moved back to New Mexico. Why? I mean, I'm curious what brought you back home?
it's I was really at the top of my game. I had the whole world was my oyster. I had so many all these experiences happening constantly, and my parents were getting older. I grew up in New Mexico. My parents were getting older. They weren't going to be around much longer, and I'd barely seen them in the past 20 years or so. Really, I just didn't want to have to deal with the guilt of not being around at the end for them. They did so much for me growing up. So I came out. I came out here, brought my family out, and set up shop, and got to hang out with my parents at the very end, and that was I feel good about that. So I no regrets. I miss New York a lot. I kind of want to go back, but
Well, but we have now by moving out here, we've actually gained some benefits because besides playing and some of the other things, we're going to talk about the thing that you started in 2017 because in 2017 you started a project called the Youth Collaboration of New Mexico. And I want to get this straight, so I'm going to read this. It's a nonprofit organization that offers young people ages 12 through 18 the after school opportunity, which is free of charge, by the way, to learn jazz improvisation. So tell me some more about this project because I am not familiar. I thought I do a lot. I am not familiar with this project. So you guys have a website. I'll put a link down below for it. Tell me some more. How does somebody get involved? What was your idea for getting this started?
it's you're talking. Yeah, I didn't actually have the whole idea all at once. I was simply helping out a band director friend at Roosevelt Middle School up here in the mountain, and he asked me to come in and work with his jazz bands. Yeah, I was a kind of assistant directing, giving little lessons to kids, helping prepare them for solo and ensemble festival, solo performances as well as like sectional stuff, and I have a special expertise with jazz, and so I worked a lot with the jazz band, and then. There wasn't really enough time during the 45-minute class to get very far into improvisation. So I said, hey, who wants to come like after school on Wednesdays or whatever it was and learn improvisation? And about a dozen or so showed up. So I worked with them every Wednesday for a while, and after about a month or two of that, I was also fortunate enough when Vicky was there. I was fortunate enough to be sort of I had kind of an artist in residence at the New Mexico Jazz Workshop. It was wonderful. I would that was my practice space. I would go in there and practice when nothing else was going on. Um, and that's really all. And I taught lessons,
Hmm.
there in the big room. And so I asked Vicky, "Hey, what if I had some kids come in during my time and just teach them improvisation?" She goes, "Yeah, fine." And then after that was in 2016, and so after about 6 months to a year of doing that, and it started to teaching improvisation, teaching like easy songs like Watermelon Man, and I just learned how to play blues, learn how to play modal things like So What, Miles Davis So What, where
Hmm.
you have just a few notes to play, and it's as long as you know those notes, it's really hard to hit a wrong notes, and
Correct.
so Cantaloupe Island, do those kind of things. Um, uh, and so we started performing. Jose Antonio Ponce set us up with our first gig. We played for a sound company, a big sound company in downtown, for a private party, and I think that's when Vicky says, "Well, hey, let's really build up this program," and advertised it, and um, uh, things kind of. So she wound up leaving right about that same time, and various things happened. So the youth jazz, she named it the Youth Jazz Initiative, and then after that we became we left the workshop actually. It became a independent nonprofit, the Youth Jazz Collaborative, which we still
Right.
are called, and and uh, the African American Performing Arts Center was kind enough to take us in. We were kind of going from location to location every week, trying to find a new. Tom let us play at the Outpost once or twice for rehearsals. We wound up like at a Masonic Lodge, Masonic Temple number 7, I think.
Okay.
And then APAC was happy to have us there uh, uh, like every week, twice a week. We wound up going twice a week because once a week was not enough with high school kids and football schedules and stuff. Better odds of somebody being able to make it. But more, we found more and more gigs. The New Mexico Music Guild calls us to play their private parties. We played a private party for a law firm, regular, it's a performing ensemble, and if there weren't enough skilled musicians in the group of kids, uh, I'd be able to hire like local players like Rodney Bowe,
Right.
uh, to come in and play and sort of help out, fill out the sound. Also, I wanted to get nothing but really the best musicians in there for the kids to hear. If a drummer comes in, I want only a drummer who has like excellent time, and really swings. I mean, those young ears need to hear the way it's
Right.
supposed to be. Yeah. So that's I mean, we're 5, 6, 7 years. We've been
Right.
doing this
Well,
every single week.
and what's funny is you've taken your experiences from your youth, from the jazz workshop and what we did out there at Madrid, and now you've put it into an organized effort here in Albuquerque. And so, how many students? I don't want to say on average. Let's just say like this year. How many students? How many kids are you working with on a regular basis?
I mean, currently, I have about really about a half a dozen,
Okay.
maybe 2 or 3 more that people drift in and drift out and get busy with this or that. But yeah, it's I'd like the program to be. I'd like to have the problem of having too many kids. That would be a wonderful problem to
Well,
have.
and you know what, some people are drawn to it, some people may not know much about this, and so like I said, I'm going to put the link to the website down below in the remarks, and anyone's interested, I think they should contact you, whether it be because I know I have a few subscribers that are high school kids, so maybe we can get some more people interested in this program. So now
Absolutely.
I want to talk about you as a performer because I know you perform on a regular basis here in town. You said before you're a Yamaha artist, which means you're sponsored by Yamaha. So tell me a couple of the groups that you perform with here in town on a regular basis. Tell me some places where we can catch you playing.
Well, currently, I mean, almost every week or every other week, I've been playing with the quartet Last Call, and we're kind of headquartered at Sheraton Uptown, um, um, right in the lobby there next to the bar. Primarily, my playing for the past 5 years or 10 years or so has been with singers, with duo singers, doing small group duo and trio, being the only horn player and kind of weaving lines and stuff behind singers. So I'm working a lot with singers, and that's
Okay.
kind of a whole art to that. But I tend to be somehow I tend to be the soloist with the rhythm section or with the singer in almost everything I'm doing, and most of what I'm doing is jazz.
Well, good. I
Yeah.
look forward to hearing you actually very, very soon. So I've got one last question for you before we run out of time. And I ask all my musicians this because musicians have the greatest stories. So do you have a strangest gig, a funniest story of something that happened to you that you can tell us about? Something weird, something strange? Because like I said, musicians have the greatest stories.
I think the most memorable experience I had um, was in New York City. I was downtown playing with the symphony orchestra, backing up Dizzy Gillespie, and somehow finagled myself into a position where I was also a soloist out front of the orchestra with Dizzy Gillespie, and um, and it was so much fun. But that night, the performance is starting to go overtime, and I had a gig all the way uptown with Tito Puente.
Okay.
I was supposed to go up and play with Tito, and I was getting kind of agitated and thinking, oh man, I'm gonna have to leave the concert early. They're going overtime. They'll understand. I got another gig, and I thought I was getting more and more like just sort of that anxiety, and suddenly, I realized, wow, Phil, you're in New York City playing with Dizzy Gillespie, and you're worried about whether you're going to get to a gig with Tito Puente on time. You
Yeah, talk
do.
about, oh my goodness. Most of us are worried about going from one gig to another, but not from one big name to that's amazing.
Yeah, so suddenly I relaxed and just was totally enjoying every moment of it. I stayed and finished the concert with Dizzy. He brought me up. He called me up, and I played Manteca with him. And it was he introduced me and brought down the house. And it's like I went down playing super low, and he's like looking at me and kind of hamming it up. And by the time I got uptown, a lot of those bands uptown start late.
Right?
So they hadn't even started yet, so it worked out.
Oh, see, it all worked out. There you go. That's a good stressor to have, I guess. I mean, it's not something I've ever experienced, but I think that would be awesome. Yeah, let's see. Stay with Dizzy or go play. You know what? I'll just enjoy what I have. There we go.
Yeah, amen, my brother. That's what it's
Eh,
all about. Yeah,
Listen,
enjoy the
I'm
moment.
running out of time. We're running out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank Phil for joining me. I look forward to meeting you in person. I look forward to working with you. And ladies and gentlemen, we will catch you next time.